Okay, this is the third game then between Firesrest and Luke in our quarterfinal. This one's a best of 5, and at this stage Firesrest is 2 up, so looking to close this out in this game if he can. Firesrest, of course, the Terran up in the top left of Ephemeron, while Luke is our Protoss player down in the bottom right. So yeah, I'm just trying to think back to the first 2 games that we had and what type of things we saw in those games. I think, if memory serves correctly, in one of the games at least we had some Cloak Banshee play, and that was reasonably damaging. In the other game, it was a pretty robust mech play from Firesrest that enabled him to win. So yeah, so definitely some variety to be had there. This opening looks pretty normal. There's the barracks has been built. There's a single gas for the Terran. Nothing out of the ordinary on the map. Nobody going for any extreme proxy builds or anything like that. Luke just with the gateway, choosing to sort of stage his wall at the top of the main. Personally on this map, this is quite a narrow choke to wall off, so I prefer the low ground wall personally, whether I'm playing Terran or Protoss. But personal preference, it doesn't really matter, to be honest. So Sidecore comes down exactly as you would expect. Luke opting side. I say as you'd expect, the 2 options that you have really as Protoss. Your gateway finishes up, and about that time you've got the minerals to expand if you want. So the option really is, do you go Nexus or do you go Sidecore? In general, the Sidecore is what you do if you either want to be a little more aggressive, or if you think your opponent is going to be aggressive, so that you can get those tech units out all the sooner. If you're feeling pretty safe and secure, you drop the Nexus first. But of course, those are decisions that you make based on scouting, and as we can see, no scouting has occurred just yet. But with that said, Firesrest just about to come in and have a little poke around with this Reaper. And it looks like, as we say, that Luke is just moving out onto the map here with a Zealot. So the Zealot is pretty slow and will take a while to get across the map. And to be honest, now that the Reaper showed up, I bet you he's a little annoyed that the Zealot is halfway across the map, because if it was at home, it could really help out in dealing with this Reaper. As I'm sure I've mentioned before, what you really want to be doing is not spending your time microing against the Reaper. You want your opponent to have to do all the microing. So when your Zealot comes out, just have the Zealot chase the Reaper around. If your opponent wants to do the fancy micro, let him. Yeah, not too bad there. They didn't really lose much at all. If we have a quick look, you can see that 2 workers were killed in exchange for that. This Zealot is not really sure what he's doing. He's just getting shot by a Marine. He would be much better off down here, where he might have got a worker killed, but not to worry. So in the production tab, we can see that Luke is building an Oracle, and I don't know whether or not Firesrest has. Let's have a look. He did, with the Reaper in here, he did see that there was a Stargate. So as a Terran, you see a Stargate early game, you have to expect an Oracle. He does have an engineering base. So there's the turret. That's nice to see. That is the correct play. You know that there is a Stargate, so you get a turret down in your mineral line to make sure you don't just lose a whole raft of stuff to this Oracle. From the Protoss perspective, if you are going to rush an Oracle, the key is in speed. You want to get that across the map as quickly as you humanly can, because ultimately you've got to expect that your opponent, especially if they have scouted it, is going to be building a turret at least. So you do have to babysit the Oracle if you know that they're going to have a turret. You can't just wade in and hope for the best, because Oracles don't last that long. So you want to get across the map quickly in the hope that maybe you catch them before they've got the turrets done. I don't know about engaging the beam before you get there, but yeah, it does need babysat. You don't want to move into range of this turret. What you want to do is dance around at the edges here, pick off these workers that are mining gas, pick off the worker that is building something. You could pick off this guy, you could pick off this guy. Those are free, and just be a little bit annoying. but most importantly, just keep that oracle alive so that you can then, I mean, you could have picked this guy off as well, and will do, in fact. Nice to keep it alive so that you can use those revelations and things a little bit later in the game. Might be able to get the snipe on this one, but I think he's low on energy. In fact, he's out of energy. Just needs to be careful that he doesn't lose this to the bunker as well. So, not a massive amount of success. One SCV picked off, but on the flip side of that, did get a full scout of his, or a full-ish scout of his opponent's base. So knows about the starport, knows about the factory, all good things. Okay, so Firesrest beginning to gear up. I've got another barracks coming down. We've got 3 racks then, and 1 factory, 1 starport. So it looks like it's going to be bio this time. This is an interesting location for the fusion core. I have no idea why you would choose that as a place to build it. I mean, maybe he's thinking I'm going to hide the fusion core, but you know, the oracle's already been in, and your opponent knows there's a turret here, so the oracle is likely to avoid this region. So you could have just built it here. This, I don't really understand why. It just seems like the middle of nowhere. There's a pretty good chance the oracle's going to see that anyway. So oracle coming in for another little poke, actually is lost, and that is disappointing. Really needed to skirt around the edge here. The key to that oracle micro is you move it to just outside the range of the turret, and you hold position it so that as the SCVs come backward and forward, they move into its range and they get zapped. Anyway, as the fusion core finishes up, what does the fusion core tell us? It tells us most likely that there is going to be battle cruisers being produced. So a battle cruiser build, you know, battle cruisers can be awfully effective units. They have that teleport ability where you can just blip them into tactical jump or whatever it's called, blip them into any point on the map. You don't even have to have vision of that point, so you can literally do it on the mini map. You can just blink them into the back of your opponent's base. And it does have quite a lengthy cooldown is the weakness. So if you haven't got vision of that point, you blink them into your opponent's base, you don't know what you're blinking them on top of, and you've got to wait for it to cool down for them to escape. So for all you know, you could be blinking on top of 20 stalkers or something like that, in which case you're dead. On the flip side, it does mean that you can get into your opponent's mineral line, get some damage done, and typically skirt around the edge to escape. I'd really like to see Luke mining some gas here. You know, it does have these saturated, so isn't in bad shape for gas, but it is lagging behind the minerals by a long way. And by the looks of things, he's trying to go for an air-heavy composition, and these void rays and the likes are fairly expensive. Not sure why there's a Phoenix coming out in the mix here. If you know, typically Phoenix can have a Phoenix or 2 in the mix with a ground army, so that you can lift up siege tanks, and that can be effective. But against void rays, obviously siege tanks do nothing. So that's an interesting choice. Does Firesrest know what he is up against at the present? Not really. I mean, he knows that there was an oracle, but it's common enough to just build an oracle for the harass that gets done by that one oracle. Maybe a few workers killed, slow your opponent down a little bit without committing to air. If the scan, however, is excellent. The scan actually sees everything, so that was quite timely. Firesrest does see what's in production. I think probably caught sight of the void race. If he clicked on it, would know that there's a fleet beacon as well. I'm curious about this decision. If you're going fleet beacon, you know, that surely means carriers. So I'm surprised that I'm not seeing Luke build more Stargates. The fleet beacon also allows you to upgrade these void rays so that they become speed rays, and that's a really useful upgrade if you're going to be using those voids for any sort of harass. They become very quick indeed. Now you can dive in, you can focus down with 3 void rays, you can focus down the turret pretty handily and get a bit of damage done and go out again and just generally be very annoying. So production tab, you know, it's of some concern, isn't it? Look at these idle buildings, idle, that's pretty much all the buildings just aren't building anything. You know, this is the only one that's actually doing any producing. Sorry, these 2 starports, every other building just doing nothing. Is going to be carriers coming out across the map, but you know, we need Oh, there they are. Look, it's just as I said, what goes on here. 2 more Stargates coming down, so it's going to be triple carrier production. Carriers are mind-blowingly expensive beasts, so Luke is definitely going to have to get at least 1 more base up and running. And given that we're 10 minutes in, you know, really we should be up on 4 or 5 bases by now. But anywho, this Zealot, I fear, has been sent to his death. He's the chosen one. You know, Commander Luke has just said, march across the map into the enemy territory to see what's there. And the Zealot's like, I will do that, because they don't question anything. So this Zealot, hopefully Luke was watching and got to see exactly what killed that Zealot, and what he sees is a sort of bunch of Marines, but importantly these 2 battle cruisers were hopefully just within range. It's quite a varied setup we're seeing from Firesrest. I mean, he's got the battle cruisers, he's got Marines, some Marauders, got a Raven, got a Thor, got a tank. It's a bit of a one of everything, and of course the problem with that is everything gets different upgrades. If we look at the upgrades tab though, not much happening. You know, +1 for the bio, combat shield, and that's it. You know, so really I'd like to see some more upgrades happening. I'd like to see these buildings being used, and similarly for in Protoss land, there isn't even charge for the Zealots. Oh, what, seriously, it's like I'm cursed or something. Charge just being researched as we speak. So these carriers that are now coming out 3 at a time, this could be a real headache to deal with. I mean, yeah, battle cruisers are good if you have the Yamato cannon, and I believe he does, then you can focus down a carrier quite handily. But if you're not microing pretty conscientiously, there is a serious danger that your battle cruisers will just be trying to shoot the little interceptors that come out, and wasting their time doing that, and will ultimately fall pretty quickly. There is enough Void Ray carrier in the air to deal with these battle cruisers pretty handily, so these could get shut down. But what I like from Firesrest is that he has flown them across the map, so he can use the tactical jump to escape that one pylon powering everything. Good. I don't know, from here, I'd sort of be inclined, yeah, we do see the Yamatos going off, but it does take more than 1 to actually kill these beasts. So you've removed all the shields from 2 carriers, but unfortunately killed none. So those 3 Yamatos would have been better spent, all 3 of them into the 1 carrier. Alternatively, I would have quite liked to see him just Yamato down one of the Stargates with the carrier in production, because that would have slowed down his opponent's build. Looking at the army supply, it looks pretty close, but you know, once carriers are in the mix, 4 carriers, 5 carriers, it is getting towards the stage where actually it just becomes impossible to micro against, unless you've just got the perfect unit composition. Thors are absolutely superb. If they're on like the, I can't remember what it's called, that mode. Nice one, Chayton, he is on this. So what you need to be doing is letting the Marines work against the interceptors, because they will pick those out of the air pretty quickly, while the Thors try and focus on the carriers. That's the way to deal with those. But of course, that is a lot of charge Zealots, and they will have a lot to say about this. So to beat this army is going to take a reasonable amount of micro. The Zealots not getting the most work done, but this Terran army is beginning to dwindle in size pretty quickly. The Void Ray is not on overcharge there, on prismatic alignment or whatever it's called these days, but it just doesn't matter. That Protoss air is so powerful that it does manage to crush through that pretty hard. It is worth mentioning, of course, that the Protoss air is +1, and the Protoss also has +1 armor as well. So you know, the slightly better upgrades. There was no upgrades for the Thors, and there was no upgrades for the battle cruisers. So yeah, a bit of a one-sided looking fight in the end. Looks like Luke is just going to go for this, and I don't blame him. He has to feel that that was the bulk of his opponent's army, and he's right. The siege tank on the high ground will eventually sort of soften up these Zealots so much that they'll stop doing stuff. But I think there's just going to be enough air here. The Vikings aren't a bad choice at all, but to be honest, you know, it takes so much micro to just keep them focused on the carriers that I think the carriers are just going to be able to clean everything up. There is one Thor out, but I don't think it's enough. The production tab, if we look, there are 3 more carriers in production. Meanwhile, in Terran land, there's actually no fighting units in production, which is slightly worrying. Luke might have to micro this a little bit, because what he really needs rid of is this Thor, so he does need to just right click on that and get that Thor dead, because it is going to be a bit of a, well, it's going to be a Thor in his side, isn't it? Anyway, moving on. Yeah, good. So yeah, it looks like Luke is actually going to get a game on the map here. You know, the reinforcements are trickling across the map, still with more carriers in production. There is now a Thor in production. And I would like to see that bit of micro happening. I want to see this Thor go down if you're going to keep your carriers alive. The problem with these big tier 3 units, carriers, Thors, is once you have a critical mass of them, they can seem unstoppable. When you've only got one of them, you know, the DPS is just nowhere close to high enough. So one Thor on its own in general is kind of pointless. One carrier on its own is kind of pointless. You need the numbers, and there are a sufficient number of carriers here to just focus on anything that comes out. And of course the Thors only coming out one at a time will get picked off, so it's hard to see how Chayton can do anything about this. He does have all these starports though, and you know, even Vikings would be really useful here if he was just cranking out Vikings, stockpiling them over to the side a little bit, so that he gets to the point where he's one-shotting carriers with them, you know, because he is mining like a boss down here, and he's got so many turrets that this would be hard to push into with air. So, you know, I wouldn't call this over by a long chalk, but there is this making its way across the map. So even if he defeats these, even if he beats this stuff, there's, you know, the next wave is going to be problematic. He really needs those zealots to get here to deal with all these turrets. You can see that a lot of these carriers actually have very few interceptors left. So, you know, this one is pretty much a paperweight. It just doesn't have any interceptors, neither does this one. So while it looks like he's still got a lot of carrier here, without the interceptors, they're kind of useless. So he needs to get these zealots to focus on the, you know, you don't need to be fighting these turrets with stuff in the air that the turrets can actually shoot when you've got zealots on the ground. You can just pull these carriers back and let the zealots do the work. I'd much rather see the carriers in the main base actually breaking down the production. But there it is, GG. Chayton taps out and Luke gets his first game on the board.